Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is April 11th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope everyone is doing well. So a few stories we're going to touch on today is a brief update to Brexit, another follow-up discussion to yesterday's hearings regarding the Attorney General Bill Barr, and more along the lines of following up with how the Democrats are responding to his testimony. And then we're going to discuss Julian Assange. I'm sure most of you are aware by now that he has been released by the Ecuadorian embassy in London, but he has been arrested by British authorities. So we are going to have a discussion on Julian Assange because he is most definitely a geopolitical figure, and the timing of all of this is rather suspect to us here at the Capital News, and I think it is indicative of much more to come waiting in the wings. So first to a brief update regarding Brexit. So British Prime Minister Theresa May gave her statement to British Parliament today in regards to the Brexit extension that they were all granted. Again, this wasn't just Theresa May who was granted this. This was the entire British Parliament who was granted this extension to October 31st, Halloween, trick or treat. We're going to find out. Now, again, Theresa May, again in rhetoric, says that she supports Brexit and that the British Parliament must honor the will and the voice of the referendum that took place in 2016. She is hopeful, at least according to her statement, that the British Parliament can come to an agreement prior to October 31st, and quite honestly, prior to May 23rd, which again is the date of the EU parliamentary elections. So she would like for everything to get wrapped up by May 22nd. Done and over with, everything can be ratified, all the I's can be dotted, all the T's can be crossed, and the UK is free to leave the European Union. Now, time will tell. Time will tell as whether or not this is the case. What we know from history, recent history, is it will not be the case. But things can change. Will they is the question. So there wasn't anything of great import to really report on as far as that's concerned. All that we know is that Theresa May was looking for an extension out to June 30th. Donald Tusk of the EU wanted something a little bit longer, maybe even perhaps a year, so out until March of 2020. They met in the middle. That was the quote-unquote grand compromise that came out of this. And again, you had Emmanuel Macron of France playing the bad cop, saying, no, we have to cut this short. 6 months is long enough. The end of October is long enough, if it even takes that long. So that's where it was. Theresa May wanted June 30th. Donald Tusk wanted, let's just call it March 30th of next year. And they cut it in the middle, and they just said, we're just going to be done here at the end of October. And again, that's just as it sits today. They were supposed to leave on March 29th. So there's nothing written in stone. There's nothing signed in blood that says there won't be another extension. How insulting will that be to the people who voted to leave? I mean, it's beyond the pale as it is already. But we will see if Theresa May and her government can deliver. We will see if she can truly reach across party lines and work with Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party and some of those other members within the Labour Party. Again, time will tell. This podcast is becoming more and more skeptical of anything getting done by June 30th. I mean, that's sort of the check-in meeting. Remember, we said, what are you going to do? Is it time for coffee? You need a blanket? Put your feet up, take a break? I mean, what's the discussion going to be? I will remain hopeful, and again, maybe naively hopeful, that Theresa May and the government can get something done, can get something that the members of Parliament will pass in a majority to get Brexit done and over with once and for all. Once and for all. Everybody's up in arms because they think it will be more orderly with a deal. All right, that's an argument to make. You still have people who want to remain, who say this has to go back to a second referendum. Again, this podcast has been very vocal in regards to stating, if that does take place, that the British people must revolt for the sanctity of the institution of democracy. Has to happen. It's more than just the economics of everything and the uncertainty and the bumps on the road along the way. This is the institution of democracy, of self-government. If this gets shattered, there aren't too many places left on this planet in which you can seek refuge. And that's a sad statement to make. So it will be incumbent upon those people if it comes to that, and let's pray that it doesn't happen. Somehow, some way, and I can't think of this for the life of me, how people, especially elected members of parliament, get up and say that a second referendum will once and for all end this. I just don't think that that's necessarily the case. The only way that that would end it, I guess, put the proverbial final nail on the coffin, would be if the votes came out again for a Brexit. Because these people who are going out there saying there needs to be a second people's vote, there needs to be a second referendum, are of the mindset that they're correct, that they should remain in the European Union, and that during the second referendum, if it should come to that, the majority will be a vote to remain, not to leave. So by my counting, that would be a tie. Ties don't call the game. It just doesn't make any sense. So what would then be the next argument over the next few years? All the people who now want to leave, are they going to say, or are they going to next throw their hissy fit for the next few years and then get a third referendum? I mean, this doesn't make any sense to me. This is the same thing with here, if you want to use the sports analogy of the Super Bowl. It's one game. Win or lose. Winner take all. That's it. You either raise that Lombardi trophy or you go home. That's all there was to it. That's the same thing with this referendum. You voted to leave or you voted to remain. Brexit was the winner. Get over it. Has it been difficult? Has it been bumpy since, politically speaking? Yes, it has been. But that doesn't mean you throw your hands up and say, oh, yeah. I mean, that's the same thing with the analogy with the Super Bowl. Well, we lost, but yeah, I mean, our guy got hurt and he got knocked out and da-da-da-da-da. I mean, it's excuse after excuse. I mean, if you're not ready for the big leagues, then go home. It's shameful. But that's all we have there as far as Brexit is concerned. Now, moving back stateside again with Attorney General Bill Barr and his testimony over the past couple of days, Tuesday and Wednesday, before the House and Senate respectively, we had Nancy Pelosi come out yesterday, as we stated, basically saying that the Attorney General is off his rails. He's gone off the rails. This is going to go to the next level. So get prepared for this. You had Nancy Pelosi do that, and then basically, to use their term and those in the media, this was a dog whistle. That was a dog whistle statement to her friends and allies in the mainstream media, because you had the likes of Chris Matthews, Rachel Maddow, Joe Scarborough, his wife Mika, and a whole host of others, Chuck Todd, basically coming out and saying, whoa, this is unbelievable. How can he make such a statement? And you have to remember that statement was in regards to the Attorney General saying, I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal. Just as a matter of fact. That's all he said. As a matter of fact. And I like this guy, Bill Bartley, so far, because I'm telling you, he's not a young man anymore. He doesn't have anything much else left to prove. His career is behind him. So hopefully that just means he doesn't give a damn. He just wants the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I hope that that's the case in regards to Bill Barr. Because basically what that statement meant, and it was it's quite apparent, which is why Nancy Pelosi and so many other Democrats, and especially many in the mainstream media, are starting to panic. Because that statement, that spying on a presidential campaign, or any political campaign for that matter, is a big deal, that means that the Attorney General is ready and willing to investigate the investigators. And who are those investigators? We know the names. We talk about them all the time. It's Barack Obama's administration. It's his FBI and DOJ. It's James Comey. It's Andy McCabe. It's Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Bill Priestap. It's a whole host of people. The names go on and on and on. It's former Attorney General Loretta Lynch. I mean, this just doesn't end. So we're going to see if there is a two-tier justice system in this country, which we already know that there basically is, because Hillary Clinton was left off the hook. Jim Comey on July 5th of 2016 threw the book at her in regards to her email scandal, but that meant nothing. Threw the book at her from point A to Z. Nevertheless, she's innocent. We're not going to go after her. There's nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. So now what we're going to see from the other side, from the Democrats, is them taking this to the next level. They are now going to attack very viciously and probably quite personally Attorney General William Barr. They're going to say he's unfit to lead. They are going to say he's nothing more than a mouthpiece for President Donald Trump. They're already doing this. They're already making these statements, so we know they're just going to up the ante and get even more visceral and violent with everything. That's just what they're going to do. You had CIA, the former CIA director, John Brennan out there. Same thing. It's the same faces, guys. It's the same names. They are scared. Believe me when I am telling you. They never thought this was going to happen. They never thought that they were going to be investigated. They never thought they would get caught. Why? Because they thought Hillary Rodham Clinton was going to be the 45th president of the United States of America, and she ain't. So they've been nervous for the past couple years, and they've been attacking our president viciously like nobody in the history of this country for 3 years. And there's no end in sight. No end in sight. Again, you've had ratings decline, specifically for CNN and MSNBC, because they've been telling all of their listeners that, hey, we got him. Dead to rights. Trump's done. He's going to be impeached. Your worst nightmare is over. It's now going to be a fairy tale ending. President Donald Trump is going to be impeached at best. Maybe he'll even be indicted for crimes and he'll end up in prison. Maybe his children will end up in prison. Maybe some people within his organization will end up in prison. Maybe people of his campaign and his administration will be sent to prison. This is what these people have been told. These are supposed to be journalists, some of them acting as journalists. Again, you have to be very mindful. A lot of these people just get on and read the teleprompter. And they make 6 figures, some of them make 7 figures. Okay? People who read the news. All right? If you have that type of money, you have that type of lifestyle, you probably like it. So you're going to read whatever they put on that teleprompter. They were singing to their choir. People who do not like Donald Trump, who despise him, his family, what he stands for. Enough's enough. They lost. They said not Bill Barr, but Rob Mueller was going to come out. He was above reproach. I mean, just the best man to do the job. He was not obstructed with. The president did not fire him. Rod Rosenstein continued to oversee that investigation. He's a weasel, but nevertheless, he was there overseeing everything. Supposedly, the Democrats could trust him. We'll see if that remains true. He's still there, by the way. I mean, we were told that this is Rod Rosenstein, may have been stepping down after Bill Barr became the Attorney General for the second time in his life. Well, that's not the case, at least not yet. Again, when we had that discussion, we said, well, that's probably keeping your enemies closer. That is my take on that, keeping your enemies closer. And that has to do with Rod Rosenstein. So the Democrats are going to up the ante. They are now not only going to start continue to attack President Trump, they are going to attack Bill Barr. To be honest with you, I don't think Bill Barr gives a damn. I think he's going to march to his own drumbeat. I think he is looking for justice. He knows the Department of Justice. He knows the FBI. And I think he is going to bring this country back to where it needs to be, where that is nobody is above the law. Let's pray and hope that that is the case. Again, we still have the Clinton Foundation investigation underway, at least presumably underway. That should be under the management of U.S. Attorney John Huber out of the offices in Utah. We'll see where that stands. But what we do know is that people who were associated with the Donald Trump campaign had their lives ruined. And again, nobody's above the law. That's the whole purpose here. Nobody's above the law. Well, if those people were guilty of things, of crimes, those were the same exact things that, according to these investigators who have been looking into the Clinton Foundation, that's exactly what Bill and Hillary are guilty of. That's just in the public domain. So if you're going to go after the likes of somebody like Paul Manafort, then you must go after people like Bill and Hillary Clinton. I don't care if they were the former president and former Secretary of State of the United States or not. They're not above the law. I mean, the Democrats were saying that President Trump's not above the law. He can be impeached. He can be imprisoned, right? Well, why can't you go after President Bill Clinton and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton? You can, and you must, and you should, if there are crimes. We already know that there were crimes. We know that there were crimes because James Comey, again, came out and threw the book at Hillary Clinton, but said and nobody here has the cojones to go after her. And again, that all goes back to Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch, the former Attorney General, meeting on a tarmac, just by coincidence out in Arizona. And then Attorney General Loretta Lynch half recuses herself and says, we're just going to make that decision. That's going to be left to the professionals at the DOJ. And of course, that decision was, we're not going to do anything. And then when you go back to the transcripts of Lisa Page, the former attorney within the FBI, they knew damn well that they weren't going to go after Hillary Clinton long before that. Just weren't going to go after her. Just weren't going to do anything. But then you have these rumors that candidate Donald Trump, or at least somebody within his campaign, is a puppet of Russia. These are rumors, these are speculations. But that's more serious, folks. That's what they took more seriously. At least that's according to Lisa Page's testimony. All right, check out those podcasts. We went through that for several days because there was a lot of testimony. There was a couple days of testimony, several hundred pages long, obviously. We tried to focus on some of the biggest nuggets there. And so go back and check out those podcasts. There's a lot of good information in there. And there's more to come out. There's more to come out. Once the president hopefully declassifies further information regarding FISA and the declassification of all of this type of stuff, that is going to make these Democrats, they're going to pass out. They're going to pass out. And people who have been listening to the likes of Rachel Maddow and Joe Scarborough and Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon and all of these people on these networks, their heads are going to explode because they're not prepared for what's coming. They think that Donald Trump is guilty of conspiracy or colluding with Vladimir Putin and the Russians. They think this. They believe this to be true. It's not. Bob Mueller came out and said there was no Trump-Russia collusion. There was no obstruction of justice. There was nothing. Now the Democrats are grasping at air, hoping to do whatever they can. Now they're going to try to discredit Attorney General Bill Barr to the best of their abilities. I got a news flash for you. It ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. You couldn't take down the president after 3 years of throwing everything and the kitchen sink at him. You're not going to get him now, and you're not going to get Bill Barr. It's just not going to happen because you have more and more information coming out. You have the Office of Inspectors General reports coming out. And again, hopefully sooner rather than later. Let's look for those sometime during the spring or summer. If it comes out any later, I'm going to start getting really hesitant and nervous as to what's going on behind the scenes. But we have a lot of more information to come out. You see these Democrats, they're panicking, and they have every right to panic because they broke the law. They broke the law. They went after a president. They tried to stage a coup. I mean, it couldn't be any more apparent. And now we know that this whole Steele dossier, this whole thing that kicked off this investigation, was fake and phony. I mean, it was paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC, and it was shoveled off to Fusion GPS. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And again, nobody would know about this if Hillary Clinton was the 45th president of the United States. This would have been swept under the rug. Everything would have been deleted, just like all of her emails, just like she took a hammer to her BlackBerry, just like she insulted the American people and said, what do you mean we cleaned it? You mean like with a rag? Like with a cloth? I mean, come on, people, wake up. Wake up. This is disgusting. We have a two-tier justice system in this country. Nobody could care less because it's your side. If you're a Democrat, you don't care what the Clintons did because they're Democrats. You don't care what Jim Comey does. You don't care what Loretta Lynch does. You don't care what Barack Obama does because they're Democrats. That ain't right. That ain't right. I mean, follow this podcast. I go after everybody. Sometimes I'm defending Donald Trump. Sometimes I'm attacking Donald Trump. I mean, I go after everybody. We're here for the truth. All right? So put this partisanship away because that's what's destroying this country. All right, now, so some other news regarding Julian Assange. This is the founder of WikiLeaks. You know, just to get right off the bat here with the president, because Donald Trump was asked some questions in regards to Julian Assange's arrest and what's going to happen. Is he going to be extradited to the United States, this, that, and the other? He said, well, I really don't know Julian Assange. I really don't know much about him. You know, this is beyond the pale. I mean, is this man a pathological liar or what? That's the best answer he could give. He didn't know this question was going to be asked of him. I mean, Donald Trump was campaigning in 2016 praising Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Remember how he said it? WikiLeaks. We love WikiLeaks and getting all the information on the Clintons. Remember? I mean, now all of a sudden he forgets who Julian Assange is and who WikiLeaks is and what they do. I mean, come on. You can't accept that. I can't accept that. And again, there's a perfect point for you right there. I was just defending Donald Trump and all of what was going on against him for the past few years, and now I'm attacking him because that's a bunch of bull. He knows who Julian Assange is. He knows who and what WikiLeaks is. So why is he telling the American people when he was asked a question in the Oval Office today, I don't know Julian Assange, I don't know. You know. That's just disgraceful. I mean, come on, man. You can't be that big of a pathological liar. Get with it. Get with it. Now, of course, you had the king and queen, Bill and Hillary. giving a speech or a talk at a New York theater, and the moderator asked them a question in regards to Julian Assange. Why anybody wants to continuously listen to the Clintons? Who's paying money to go listen to these people? I mean, you'd have to pay me to go listen to them. I mean, who's paying to get into how much are these tickets to go watch these people talk? It's unbelievable how people want to hear what they have to say. But nevertheless, they were asked a question about Julian Assange, and Queen Hillary said, well, he needs to answer for what he has done. Really? He needs to answer for what he has done. How about you, Hillary? Do you need to answer for what you have done? Because you've insulted the American people. You walk above the law because presumably for the time being you are above the law because the Department of Justice and the FBI couldn't come down with you. I mean, they said you were guilty, but we're not going to prosecute. We're not going to prosecute. So she feels like the queen. She feels like the queen. And who can blame her? She got away with it. She got away with it. She got away with having a private email server in her home in New York in her bathroom. Not protected, not guarded. Who knows what happened? She deleted emails, 33,000 emails after subpoena. She destroyed her BlackBerry physically with a hammer. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Yet it was fine. Yet people still went to the polls and voted for this woman. And people are still lining up, I guess, to listen to her and Bill give a talk about who knows what. I mean, these people destroyed the country and you want to go listen to them and give them your money? It's unbelievable. It's disgusting. So he needs to answer for what he has done. You know, I'd have to say that's probably true. I mean, if he's guilty of something, Julian Assange isn't above the law either, and he does. But guess what, Hillary? So do you, and so does Bill. Now, Julian Assange, he is, as I said at the top of the program, he is a geopolitical figure. WikiLeaks, whether you agree with that organization or disagree with that organization, to my most recent knowledge, has never been wrong on any of the information that they have released. Now, that's in the world of fake news, that's a pretty good track record. That's a very good track record. Because you have the likes of CNN and MSNBC not telling their people anything about the other side, never telling them about Christopher Steele, never telling them about the Steele dossier as far as it being funded by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign. I mean, that's why they're shaking in their boots. That's why they're attacking Bill Barr. So this is all connected. Everything is connected. The president having convenient amnesia and not understanding who Julian Assange is. Now, Julian Assange, and remember, folks, he has been locked up, well, not locked up, but he hasn't left the Ecuadorian embassy since I believe it was 2012 over in London. So he's been probably going through a lot of cabin fever because if he ever stepped foot out of that embassy, he would have been arrested. But now he's been arrested nevertheless. Now, is it just a coincidence that only a month ago, the International Monetary Fund gave quite a bit of money to Ecuador? Suspicious, isn't it? You always have to look at the timing of these things. Ecuador gets a lot of money from the International Monetary Fund, which is basically the United States. You have to understand something if you're not familiar with the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. They're basically one and the same. And because the United States is the vast superpower of the world, it basically does whatever the United States of America wants. So if there's a lot of money going somewhere, it's pretty much with the blessing of the United States. So now you also have some warmer relationship going on between the U.S. and Ecuador. And then, like I said, a month ago, they received a healthy dose of money from the International Monetary Fund. And then a month later, we have the arrest of Julian Assange. Now, it remains in question as to whether or not Julian Assange will be extradited back to the United States of America. But it's interesting to note that Jeremy Corbyn, yes, Jeremy Corbyn, the same leader of the Labour Party, has come out with a statement basically telling the government not to extradite Julian Assange for, quote, exposing evidence of atrocities in Iraq and Afghanistan. And, of course, he's relating those atrocities at the feet of the United States of America. So when you turn on the news and you have a lot of people, particularly, it's really across parties, actually, but more so, I think, on the Republican side, coming out and saying that Julian Assange is a traitor, he needs to be sent to prison, this, that, and the other thing. What this is, folks, is the light switch being turned on and the cockroaches are scattering. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. This is what all good and great investigative journalism is supposed to be about. We do not condone these types of actions from our government. Things that are done in the shadows with our money in our name. When an organization like WikiLeaks or New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, I don't care who they are, when they shed light on these types of atrocities and these types of workings that are taking place in the shadows of our government, the light needs to be shed on them. They must. How can we have a government that's accountable to the people if we don't know what's going on? How can we hold them accountable if we don't know what's going on? That's the whole purpose of having a government that is run and managed by the people. But that has long been the case in this country and most elsewhere. And that's a true shame. But so you're going to have a lot of people, particularly politicians, coming out and saying that Julian Assange needs to be extradited back to the United States. He needs to face justice, which basically means he needs to be sentenced to many years behind bars. Why? Because he exposed the truth. He exposed some atrocities, some wrongdoings of this government and other governments around the world. That's a sad day for journalism. It's a sad day for the institutions of democracy and of our constitutional republic. I'm not going to be here and say that Julian Assange is a huge hero, but my goodness, when somebody speaks the truth and you want to send that person away, that also speaks volumes. We'll continue this conversation, but I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a pleasure having you. As always, please like, share, subscribe, get the word out. Leave your comments. I'd love to hear from you. This is the Capitol News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.